Welcome to the Star Trek Set Chat and Pack Crack video series. Today we're going to be talking about the Holodeck Adventures expansion set, premiered in December of 2001. Consists of 142 cards, 47 common, 40 uncommon, 20 rare, with 34 rare pluses, and again, an ultra rare. Before this video started, I had lots of questions about Holodeck Adventures. Dan, what's going on with this set?
So Holodeck Adventures has been on Decipher's plan since the early 90s. And we see in things as early as the strategy guide, announcements of this is the next set right after Q Continuum. We're going to do the Holodeck Adventures expansion. And so what we guess happened instead of having the Holodeck Adventures developed and released at that point is that Decipher got the license for the First Contact IP and ran with that right away. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a timeline associated with that license where if you don't use it, you lose it and we sell it to the next company. But they ran with that IP and ran through First Contact and then got the IP for Deep Space Nine and Voyager and continued to run through those new IPs. And as they got to the end of making the Voyager and Borg block, they realized that the last plot point that they really wanted to cover in Voyager was the Children of Light, the holodeck crew from the two-parter, I believe, in the middle or the early season 7. And so it forced them to do that, to develop all of their rules and all of their plans around holodeck characters anyway. And by pulling them out and putting them into this set, they got to bring all of the cool personas of all of our favorite characters from every series into this one expansion set. And so from that collector's perspective, this is a lot of fun to open and a lot of fun to look through because it's all single episode or couple episode personas of your favorite cast from all of the different shows. You've got your Captain Protons and you've got Dixon Hill as the ultra rare this time around, which is Picard in his detective alter ego. There's a couple of fun other things that you'll see in this set. For example, the Captain Proton cards are actually black and white instead of having the same coloration as the rest of the set. You'll also see the introduction of what they call holoprogram cards that are settings, holodeck settings for each of several different programs that they ran repeatedly throughout the different shows. And I know they have significant game impact, and I have no idea what it is. Maybe Johannes can talk about game impact for holodecks for us.
I can try. If I look at the list of the Holodeck Adventures cards, I notice there is probably the highest percentage of cards that by now have received a change to the game text, either for clarity or simply because they were too powerful, or sometimes because they created rules issues. For example, we had Clone Machine in this set that allows you to have multiple copies of unique personnel in play, which is not a big deal if they are only collections of skills and attributes, but if they have certain special abilities, then this might create some rules headaches. We have Cybernetics Expertise, which is a card that allows you to play androids for free and retrieve them from the discard pile. We had Holodeck Door that gives all your factions access to ships with holodecks. You can actually play it early on or seed it. And then your Romulans and your Klingons all have ships with holodeck equipment and can go to town. We had very powerful cards like Vic Fontaine, who allows you to download any card if you let him run into a dilemma and be stopped, and you could set this up. So a way to play your deck by a script and make sure that you get this certain card at a certain point. We had Cyrus Redblock, who interacted with dilemmas that had murder in title and lore, and there were a couple dilemmas that were incredibly brutal when they were paired with Cyrus Redblock. There is Anastasia Komananov that downloads Smoke Bomb, which is a way to abort a mission attempt when bad stuff is about to happen to you, similar to Cass and her download of The Gift. That's still a thing today. Another card on the list is Sherlock Holmes, one of the best draw engines in the game. It simply says at the start of your turn, you can draw cards until you have as many as your opponents in hand. So this was a standard move for a while, that everybody got their Sherlock out first, and then just make sure you empty your hand, and then you can draw it up until it's even to your opponent, and they do the same stuff. So a way to not only, as we had in the last couple of episodes, you could now play a lot of cards per turn, but you also had good ways to replenish your hand again. And one thing I wanted to point out is that we here have two interrupts that interact with other interrupts that we had in Voyager and the Borg, I think. And those are interrupts that are known among tournament players as the Holy Haxony. I'm not sure who to credit with that specific term, but what it is a number of interrupts that, if you play them in the correct ratios, they give you a slight card advantage, but more importantly, they allow you more or less to manipulate your deck until you have the cards in hand that you want. And I've seen a couple of games in the early 2000s where players would do this for several minutes, discarding a lot of cards, shuffling cards back into the deck or putting them on top of the deck. And then, even though they only end up with 2 or 3 more cards in hand than they had before, now they had exactly those 8 or 9 cards they want, and then they drop a ship with space-time portal with 8 super good guys aboard and then attempt a mission. And if you go, there's a very good article about it from the time that's still online that goes into the mathematics of how this works. So nothing that casual players ever bothered with, but in tournament settings, that could give you the edge. Whether that was enjoyable for the person playing it and the person on the receiving end of it, that's an entirely different question, but that's something that happened. And those things in Holodeck Adventures put the remaining pieces into that puzzle.
One more quick thing from a collector's perspective, we do see one error card in this set. The common card sheet, we're pretty familiar with the duplicate or the 4th card on the 121 card sheet. In this case, it's Holosuite Door or Holosuite, and there are 2 copies of the card that have the text correct, and 2 copies of the card that have G ring instead of docking ring as the printed location for that site. Fortunately, they're equally available and the most common of the commons. So it's not terribly difficult to get a hold of both copies, but there is both an error and a correction card in your packs.
Also, continuing our discussion of the power of ultra rares, we just came from Borg, where we had a relatively low power Reginald Barclay. In this case, the Dixon Hill has the quite powerful ability of once per game, when solving a mission where present, ignore its requirements, which is a pretty significant ability. And also the special download of Dixon Hill's business card, which is a great callback to the Farjo collection set where we first saw that.
I'm very new to this set and looking at it. I'm kind of wondering, where it fits. Looking back on the back of the pack, which I have here, it says these cards enhance the Voyager warp speed and Voyager only play format. So kind of where does Holodeck fit into the play and just maybe the franchise and the lore as we go down these sets?
From a collector perspective, I love this set because it feels like it's the beginning of Decipher trying to tie up a whole bunch of loose ends and cards that they've promised forever or that they've referenced or thought about forever. Things like Clone Machine, things, a lot of the personas are mentioned or are talked about or discussed in their marketing literature from the 90s and early 2000s. So this feels like a it definitely feels like it's intended to add to the Voyager set, but it's also very much feeling like, hey, we had all these other things too. Let's wrap up some loose ends.
One thing that stands out to me is that if you look at holographic cards in the earlier sets, the only real ones of decent value, especially in things like Premiere, came for the Federation faction, such as your Albert Einsteins or your Leia Brahms. The Klingons had a few, Feklar wasn't bad, and the Romulans had a few, but really the Federation were the only one who could benefit from much more powerful cards. Whereas here we see a lot of either dual affiliation or non-aligned hologram cards, allowing other factions to benefit from holographic characters with decent attributes and abilities.
And Johannes, does this set contain a lot of Delta affiliations that you would put in like a deck with your play group, with Voyager, with the Borg? Does this fit in, or does this kind of seem more like an oddball, like you really maybe wouldn't incorporate into those decks?
It's not necessarily something that lends itself extremely well to Delta Quadrant only decks, but there are certainly some pieces that you could add. If you look at powerful holograms like Mona Loves It, or also Leonardo da Vinci, they have very good skills. Da Vinci has a nice special download. So there are definitely some things to spice up your deck, but it's not something that, or this set is not something that you can use to build around and build a deck from a working deck from scratch.
This is also the set that I get the second most requests for autographed cards from. Almost everybody wants their premier Black Border next gen crew, but as soon as they've got their Black Border Picard or their Black Border Data, the first thing they want is Sherlock Holmes, not one of the other personas from anywhere else in the series. So this ends up also having a bit of a secondary market just for the people who want the actors to scribble on them.
One thing that I think Dan mentioned, the thing that they are tying up or revisiting certain themes from before, that we see this, for example, in Bajoran Resistance Cell, which is a very nice play and draw engine for Bajorans. They are now revisiting it with this download of espionage cards, and that is a very good way where you use a single card and you gave an existing affiliation a very big boost with just this one card, because it allows them to play just that little bit quicker, and it probably was over the top like many other things, but it was a nice way to say, here's something for those other guys. The Bajorans don't feature heavily in holodeck episodes, so maybe the odd character here and there, but this set has something that says, okay, here you are, have something, have some fun. Cardassians get Krell Moset, that is quite difficult to get into play in your Alpha Quadrant, but it's also something to just give them and find something for every faction, or almost every faction.
So Johannes, what do we want to open?
Edward Jellicoe, because I prefer a little more formality on the bridge.
All right. I'm the one who doesn't get the joke. So what's going on? If you don't want to spill all the beans, Johannes, maybe Tom and Dan can
This
jump
is
in.
the Next Generation 2-part episode, Chain of Command, where Picard is captured and interrogated by the Cardassians, by Gul Madred. And Edward Jellicoe is the captain that takes over command of the Enterprise during that time and clashes with Riker. But a lot of people, after thinking about it, have given him a lot of credit for being the right man for the right job at that exact moment, and being a pretty good captain, despite being presented as a pretty unpleasant one.
And he also gets credit for a lot of credit from Marina as the character that forced Troy into uniform and out of the misogynistic spacesuits.
And even though her character was against that, the actress was in favor of it.
Was thrilled. Like Jellicoe, there's a couple other loose end cards or things that we had seen and get to add in this set. We see Ezri Dax in this set. This is the only Ezri Dax card. We see Chancellor Gowron show up. So we start seeing some of the evolution of the personas we've enjoyed in Deep Space Nine since they wandered off the DS9 block and into the Voyager one. We also see, like I said, the personas of just about every main character from all of the other shows that we've liked. So I have a personal affinity for the Captain Proton personas, Arachnia, Proton, Buster Kincaid, Chaotica. And you also see a whole bunch of things from the Arman Bashir episode. So all of the James Bond spoof, Dr. Noah, Anastasia Kamenev, Professor Honeybear, Secret Agent Bashir. The common 45 Dom Perignon is a lot of fun there. And you're going to see, obviously you want to open the duels from both from a resale or value perspective and from a gameplay or collector perspective, as they're harder. But there's so many fun rares in this set that you can open a bummer, but even your bummers are pretty powerful.
I also think there's a lot to say about value for this set. We're seeing a large increase in cost of these final 2 expansion sets, which we can't say for sure, but is probably due to production number in terms of total amount produced. As regards our overall story, of course, you want to see the ultra rare, but it does set a new high watermark in terms of market value. So previously, your Black Border, Picard, and Premier was the highest. Then your Alternate Universe Future Enterprise. Then your DS9 Terok Nor station card. Then your Reflections ultra rares. And this is the first time since Reflections we're seeing the ultra rare in this set has a higher value than the ultra rares in Reflections. So it's pretty significant. In terms of the rares, well, rare pluses, I should say, top of the list would be your dual affiliation Herogen non-aligned Alara, which I love because it has the ability to report holodeck personnel aboard and forms the basis of decks just for that reason. We have the dual affiliation Cardassian Herogen Kajal, the dual affiliation Federation Herogen Weiss, who Dan actually pointed out to me, it's the same actor who played Simon Tarses, comes back to play Weiss in this episode. Spencer Garrett, who I love. The dual affiliation Bajoran Herogen Iden. Then the strange thing about the rares in this set is that obviously the dual affiliations are their own beast, but unlike the other sets where it's usually high value cards and suddenly low value cards, the value of the rares in this set is much more of a continuum. So I can't really just say these are high value, these aren't. I'm just going to go down the list and pick a stopping point. So of the single affiliation rares, Esri Dax is the highest. She has a wonderful ability, which is kind of like the Mr. Quark, Mr. Rom, and Mr. Nog cards in Mirror Mirror, in that she reports if Jadzia Dax is killed in this set. So after Esri, then Sherlock Holmes, then Captain Proton, then the Polana, Daughter of Morale, personality of a Klingon affiliation card, Chancellor Gowron, the ECH, Professor Honeybear, Professor Moriarty, Sheriff Worf, Admiral Hansen from the Best of Both Worlds episodes, great card. And then Edward Jellicoe is certainly one you'd love to see, both for lore value and for market value. And there are many more, but I'm just going to stop there because that's where you see a bit of a tipping point. As regards uncommons, all the uncommons from this set have some value, unlike other sets. Any uncommon in this set is good, but ones of notable exception would be the Holodeck Door, EMH Mark II, the Twin Mistresses of Evil from the Black and White set, and Telosian Cage, and Binar's Data Transfer, continuing that Binar weapon enhancement notability. Even then, lots of other good high-value uncommon, especially any uncommon who is a personnel card. So even your Seskals or your Milas or your Naomi Wildmans, all good to see. On the common side, 2 cards of note, or 2 types of card. One, ablative armor. So that's the armor that Voyager gets in the episode Endgame, is significant value for a common. And there's also a very large number of dual affiliation common cards, which are almost all holograms. And you even see some very strange, not strange, but unique things like hologram cards for the Dominion affiliation. which is almost completely anomalous in this set, and even some for the dual affiliation Dominion. Can't believe I've forgotten them. The Breen dual affiliation Breen card as well. So those were pretty good. So lots of potential fun in this set. It's something that is just a thrill to open, regardless in many ways.
Any other cards or thoughts before we jump in?
Seriously, the card that I think gameplay-wise would be my favorite is Anastasia Komarnov, and other than her, the Olara.
One more thing, we also see reintroduction of Q Dilemma and Q Interrupts, which we've not seen for quite some time. Obviously DS9 is when I still remember them, but there are some Q cards coming back into play here.
Let's do it.
The best thing about this game, it just brings back so many memories and moments from the shows that kind of reinstall this nostalgia when I was a kid watching them. And, Ever Jellicoe, Johannes, when you mentioned, was just a name to me. And then I looked up the card, and all the memories of that episode kind of came back. And I'd certainly love to see more of that when I open up this pack. So
his confrontation with the Cardassian speech, when he gets them to eject their phaser coils, like that should be a 10-pointer right there. Like he should get bonus points if he wins a battle against Cardassians.
And we have different IPs here, multiple franchises. So that's a really cool part of opening this pack. I guess we'll see what we get. Here we are. Again, 11 cards. I believe the fourth card is the Dixon Hill. Is that right?
That'll work.
Here we go, right away from the show tapestry, right? Card being stabbed. So it comes back to me.
One of the better Q cards to use if you use a Q Continuum side deck, because the Q Continuum side deck has a couple of ways to force your opponent into very minor point losses, but they might just be enough to force them into doing an additional mission. And this is another one of those that can potentially give them -5.
Another common.
There's one of your
Yes.
holo programs. This one's Dr. No's Mountain Retreat, which is fun. It's the DS9 holo program.
There's Nicky the Nose.
This is an example of, even though it's not a rare card, it's a lot of good skills. And this isn't the best one, but those have pretty decent value just for being personnel.
And his special download of the Tommy Gun is interesting because in a set that encourages you to include a lot of holodecks, now you also get the download of the antidote to that entire strategy with the Atomic Gun that allows you to erase, I think it says up to 100 holograms, if I remember correctly.
So Tommy Gun is from First Contact, and it can erase up to 100 holographic personnel. So a must if you're playing in a deck building from this expansion.
Okay, now here's the rare. We're looking for a non-aligned icon in the top left. We have, we do not. Another Hirogen.
That
Hirogen?
could be even better.
What are we looking for here? I want to shout it out.
Olara.
Olara or Iden.
Oh,
Yep.
we scored.
Fantastic pull, sir.
We scored. Okay.
One of the best.
What makes this one of the best?
Being dual affiliation to begin with makes him tough to get, but also just the thematic element with the show, pairing up with the Alara, as a ship that can download holograms, the Hirogen heavy mix, but also used with Bajoran. Just a great card.
And he has this special download of the Children of Light, so that's kind of your centerpiece of a deck that uses this mechanic, and that makes a lot of this ties the Delta Quadrant holograms together pretty nicely.
Plus, given our rares from Voyager and the Borg, this is like several orders of magnitude greater in terms of a pull.
Yeah, at the moment, this card probably pays for most of the packs we've opened to this point.
Well, I will put Ida in the sleeve right away.
That's a good idea.
This is just really awesome that Holodeck Adventures near the end here. Excitement is revving up, and to get a sweet pull from random packs, one of each set is pretty awesome. So happy we got there this pack. I'd be inspecting this if it were a white border to see kind of where the errors are, but it looks pretty clean.
Yeah, that is one of the things you don't see very often on the late cards is the blotches. I think really the Decipher just didn't print enough of them to actually end up getting that kind of damage on the print sheets to get the blotches.
And this is your highest value pull of this entire series by far. So great to see it.
We started with an Enterprise, and our penultimate pull is an item. So awesome.
One of our Delta Klingons, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Not great, but still better than most of the alphas.
Here's an example of the dual affiliation cards in the common, and I think this is common, where you're seeing, again, it's rare to have a Cardassian hologram. So along with the other chap we just talked about, Kralmaset, that's it.
Oh yeah,
one of a very few number in that bracket. But that one card there is worth more than most rares from White Border 95, for example.
It's common.
Ridiculously, yep. Yes.
You can sell that for twice the price of a White Border 95 rare, as long as it's not one of the fancy ones.
Okay.
Very powerful Kazon there.
Yeah. More
especially
overpowered
for
Kazon
your
cards.
attack decks.
This is a tool for Hirogen, since we said they have a lot of problems with the number of images that they have, and also thematically they don't fit on a lot of missions. So they have this generic card here to turn other missions into Hirogen attemptable missions. So you could play some mind games with this and try and hide what you're doing in the seed phase by seeding missions that you probably wouldn't associate with Hirogen. But there are probably better examples of misdirecting people with mission phase seeding than using hunting group.
There's another Cardassian hologram.
That's one of the interrupts I was talking about that you can use to manipulate your hand. So if you read it, it plays once each turn to reveal 2 sets of 3 cards from the top of your draw deck. Take 1 set into hand, discard the other. So you increase your chances of finding the right cards. And with other interrupts that have synergy with this, with the discard pile and hand manipulation, that's what I was talking about before.
This is one of the higher value non-personnel uncommons. Once again, it'll sell for more than 95 White Border rare mission for sure.
And it's fun too. It's from the USS Bozeman time loop in Next Gen.
Time and again.
Yes, thank you.
This is an example of murder dilemmas. Since it has the law reference, he murdered all of the filthy animals there. So with Cyrus Redblock, you would seed a lot of these dilemmas, and then Cyrus is a card that could be downloaded with the holodeck door, and then your opponent would simply suffer a lot more attrition since they run into these murder dilemmas all the time and lose a personal whenever they do so.
And this actor knocks it out of the park playing this kind of character. So he's a memorable performance.
Incredibly creepy episode. fantastic actor.
And we're back to the beginning.
Yep.
That's your best pack yet. Easily.
Your premiere was your second best, but this one, we'll take it.
And just the other dual affiliation commons. Just nice to see. Lots of good
Absolutely.
stuff.
Right.
I think it would be hard not to find something good. I think 9 times out of 10, you're going to have a fun pack, even if it's not a great pack like this.
Yeah, exactly. Even if the character on the duel isn't one that you remember or particularly care about, it's interesting that sometimes the least nostalgic card is the most valuable in this case. So always a fun set to open. I wish there were a couple hundred extra holodeck boxes available just because they're so much fun to open.
A fun little collector's note. There are 9 black and white Captain Proton cards, which means they fit great into a 9-pocket page. I have about 3 of those complete sets like that. And Captain Proton, even though he's not huge value, is just one that you're always thrilled to get. And any of those other personas is fun.
Yep. I'm working on a autographed set of those 9, and that will go into a frame, and that'll be a lot of fun.
I really wanted that, but I think the guy who played Lonzak isn't with us anymore. So
Yep.
Doesn't mean you can't get the others, but he was a great character too.
Agreed.
And Satan's Robot is an equipment card, but it's the same guy as we saw who played Ayala in Voyager. So he can still be got.
Well, happy we pulled a bomb card, finally in our polls, and I feel like this and the next expansion maybe are the places to do it with these packs. So hard to get, so scarce, and the value just exponentially increasing here. It's nice to get more dual affiliations. I think we had 1 in the last pack or the pack before, and it was Chell. And did we have any in the last pack? We may not have.
No.
So yeah, nice to get 3. And yeah, kind of think through all the episodes from different franchises in 1 pack.
Yeah, I think statistically, you've got Voyager, the Borg, and Holodeck Adventures, which have this dual affiliation hierarchy. And the fact that you had only 3 packs, 1 of each, and got 1 dual affiliation is statistically highly anomalous. So even though we didn't get great cards previously, this makes up for all of that.
Awesome. Well, happy to share this open with you, and hopefully we continue opening great things in our last and final pack as we kind of enter the twilight of this YouTube series. But let's move on to the motion pictures.